But anyway, let me begin. I was going to talk to you about this, and basically, I thought to myself, this would make an excellent blog that could go out on our web page, because so many people are afraid of it. And I'm talking about ticks, okay? And, and it's funny, years ago, almost 20 years ago, Dr. Steve Schutzer out of the UMDNJ, which is the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, came down and began to study the instructors, at the tracker school and their frequency of ticks as compared to everybody else. They even, several times a year, he took our blood samples and stuff like that. And he was amazed at how, compared to normal people, where he tested like in Lyme, where it gets its name, and other areas of the country, their frequency of getting ticks was like 100 times more than the instructors here. And he asked me, why is that? And I said, because we know where the ticks are. And he said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, if you're camping in bear country, I said, you got to know where the bears are before they know where you are, essentially. And I said to him, look at it this way. If you get somebody that is a very seasoned outdoors person, you'll find that they very rarely, if ever, get poison ivy. And he says, yeah, you're right. And I said, the reason is they know what the plant looks like, they know where it grows, and they avoid it. They avoid it. Well, the same can be said about ticks. And I said, there are certain areas where you, at those tick-rich times of the year, you avoid. And if you have to go into them, then check yourself very frequently. So I said, for instance, it's the same rule as a trapping area, a transition area. The big vector in the tick population is the cycle where they infest the mice. Not so much the deer, it's the mice. So what I told him is, if you have a mice-rich habitat, a transition area, then your likelihood of ticks is going to go through the roof. So he said, my God, that could bear some scientific research. So together, we actually did a scientific paper which was printed in Lancet magazine. It was that, roundly approved and accepted. What we did is we would go into a deep forest, and we would take and we cordon off an area 10 foot by 10 foot with strings. We even took GPS readings way back then when they first came out. And then I'd get volunteers, students, we'd cordon that off into square feet. So we had 100 square feet. And they get down on their hands and knees, all of them tracker trained, of course, because looking at infinite detail, and we would physically pick the ticks off of the landscape. We found that in a deep forest, even with underbrush sort of like this, maybe a little more sparse than this, that consistently you might find 2 to 3 to 4 ticks in that 100 square feet. In the middle of an open field of moderate grasses, not real tall ones, we'd find the same thing. But then we would start moving closer to the transition areas. The deeper part of the transition area were just that low brush and grasses and forbs buttressed up against the forest. In that 10 square feet, we'd find 20, 25 ticks. But in the very edge area between field and the rest of the brush, where it was low brush, we could find 50 and sometimes more ticks. So if you look at a transition area, you ask yourself, is this excellent habitat for mice? And you look and you say, okay, here's a field. here's a forest. And as you move through the transition area, like this, you find that right at the edge of the field and the forest, here, where the brush is very low, tight, thick, grass is mixed in, excellent mouse habitat. You can get 50, 75 ticks in this area. As you move back, you might get 50. Back further, you might get 25. And into the forest, you might get 2 to 3. Same within the field, 2 to 3, as long as the grasses are not long enough. So you learn that these two areas here, where it's very, very mice-rich habitat, you're going to find the most ticks. You're more likely to get ticks at the edge of your lawn at home and the hedge, kind of, you know, the undergrowth, than you are in the middle of a thick forest, in all seriousness. So the paper actually made it into Lancet, which is a very prestigious scientific journal. I guess you could look it up. I can't remember the title of it. It was something to do with Lyme disease and mouse habitat, something like that. I should have gotten a PhD because of it, because we put in almost a year of study. Absolutely a year. We also found out that, you know, you can actually, in the dead of winter, where it's 15 degrees out, sit down on the ground. And after you're sitting for 10 minutes, you've warmed the ground enough to awaken the ticks. And you can get ticks in the middle of the winter. And, you know, so it's like anything else. Avoid the poison ivy. You know what it looks like, you know where it grows. Bears, you know their habitat. You know what a bear trail looks like. You avoid those areas. You know where they are before you know where they know where you are. And the same holds true with ticks, okay? Just if you say to yourself, my God, this would be an excellent mouse habitat, it's also an excellent tick at the worst stage for ticks. That's when they're the most likely to have Lyme disease and any number of other pathogens that they do carry. Here in camp, we have the problem of things being imported. Either the grasses we bring in or the people that are walking out in the thick brush coming back in here and they drop off. So this is not a good study area because it is not common. But you go out to a common study area, and I mean, we did probably close to 80 of these research patches, probably more. But over the course of a year, leading up to that, I know we did about 20, and that's what Steve says, my God, we got to make a scientific paper out of this, a thesis. And we did it a little bit after just to confirm some of the astronomical readings that we got, and we found that they were true. And keep that in mind. Because you're all, you know, that's the, you know, you get people who say, I don't want to go down there to the tracker school because of ticks. Well, what are you going to do? Stay indoors the rest of your life, you know? I mean, God, I mean, there's enough out there in the world of nature that'll mess you up, certainly, but I believe there's more in society that'll mess you up. I mean, with all the mall shootings and the theater shootings and everything else. Anyway.